Alright, today we got to do the rear brakes on a 99 Accord, so come along with me. I'll show you how I do it. Now as you can see, I already have the vehicle up in the air, and I'll just show you real quick. Right there, that's the lift point on this vehicle. Put it right on that little tow hook. That's the designated area. You're going to need a pretty tall jack like I have here, and just lift it up in the air. And then put the jack stands right here on these brackets. There's one right here, and you can see I have one on the other side right over there. I'm not going to get under a car without jack stands. And it's hot out today, so I got to run the cooler. Hopefully it doesn't make too much noise. As you can see, what is it, 106 out today. And luckily it only feels like 106, so if it's too obnoxious I'll try to take it out in post-production, so we'll see how it goes. And as you can see, I have the parking brake off, that way the brakes aren't locked up. And I also have both front wheels chocked. And we'll just pop the wheel off. I'm using an impact wrench 19mm socket. Obviously with an impact I can do it with the wheel off the ground. If I didn't have an impact, we want this wheel to be touching the ground, and then we could loosen the lug nuts. Or you could have somebody step on the brake or put the parking brake on just for a little bit and then loosen them up, and then go take the parking brake and release it again. Alright, as you can see, this vehicle is set up with rear disc brakes. A lot of older Accords and Civics have drum brakes, but this one, because it's an EXL, it has the upgraded disc brakes. And the parking brake is incorporated into this caliper, so we're going to have to twist this piston back in instead of just pressing it in. So let's get going. And as you can see, I popped the cap off the master cylinder. So we just need to keep an eye on that brake fluid as we push the pistons back in, make sure it doesn't overflow. If it looks like it's going to overflow, we'll have to take some out. That usually only happens if somebody's topped these things off. Alright, now I'm just going to pop these two 12mm bolts off. I should be able to get in there with my impact and knock them out real quick. Yeah, there goes the first one. And there's the second one. And we should be able to just pull this out. Come on. And we'll set it right there so it's not hanging. We'll look at these pads. The outside one is not too bad. Inside one is also pretty much right at the wear indicator, just like the other side. So you can see. And while we're right here, we'll just pop our rattle clips out. We have new ones, we have new hardware. Alright, now I'll just take a wire brush, just try to clean up these contact points a little bit. These look really good, so I just got to clean them off a little bit. If they were rusted and all crappy, I would have to pull the caliper off, or this bracket off, and then hit these with a file to knock them down. But you saw how easy the pads move. These things are just fine. And we'll get the face of the piston. And the contact points in here. Alright, now we'll get this piston back in while we're thinking about it. Now what I like to do, sometimes these boots get caught up. Now this one looks like it's just fine, it's moving around. But what I like to do, I just take a little bit of silicone paste and put a little bit on the tip of my screwdriver, like that. And I'll just run it in there like that, and that'll allow it to slide nice and easy. This is especially important if you live in a rust prone area. these things will get seized down there, and then this boot will get all twisted up and caught up, and you don't want that. So now we should be able to just spin it in. Alright, now we'll just take our caliper wind back tool kit and we'll get that thing spun back in. Now this one happens to be made by Tool, I think that's how they say it. This is a 21 piece. They have 22 piece versions, they have 23 piece versions. They're all made by the same company, I believe, in Taiwan, same manufacturer, they just have different names on there. At least I'm fairly confident that's the case. And so you'll get this basic layout, they have the same part numbers stamped in there and things like that. So that's what I've seen so far. So it really doesn't matter so much the name on the tool, just get the one with the most different attachments, because that way you'll have a better chance of finding one that you need. This M1, the one marked M, seems to work very good on most Hondas. That's why it's the dirtiest. So we need that, and we'll need this tool. This one spins it in clockwise. This one would spin it, in counterclockwise. So I think some Fords do that. But this one, on both of these, we should be able to spin it in clockwise and be just fine. And then we need this plate right here. So we'll get it set up and get this thing spun back in. You can see this piece goes on there like that. Then this is just a magnet and sticks on there like that. We're going to put it in here just like this, and we're going to get it in the grooves. You can see this has four-way groove on there, if you can see that. So we just need to put it in there, and we're just going to spin it back in, and we're going to use this to apply pressure to the back here. So we'll be applying a pressure back, or I should say it'll be actually going this way. So it'll be holding it stiff so that we can spin this in, and it'll press on the back and it'll push it back in, but it'll be spinning it at the same time. Whoop, there's my glove. And so that's all we need to do. Now sometimes, because there's this spring right here that puts tension on the pads, it likes to get in the way. It's a pain in the butt. But it's also a pain in the butt to pop them out and put them back in. So you're kind of screwed either way. You can either pop this out and make this easier, but it's a pain getting this back in, or you can leave it in and then it's kind of a pain because you got to press against it to spin it. So like one of those pick your poisons. But we got to spin it back in, and then we just need to make sure that these grooves right here are perpendicular. At least one set of them are perpendicular to this. So that way, where is it? Our pads, this little notch right here, you can see the pad, sits in there. Well, sits in there like that. That notch right there is going to sit right there in that corner. And that way, when you use your parking brake and stuff, it's applying and twisting back out and puts pressure on there. Otherwise, if that pin is not lined up, you'll have spongy brakes, and your parking brake's probably not going to work for a while. So you don't want that. And I'm pushing against this plate, so it's pushing against the spring. That way it keeps this in place. You just twist a little bit and then it loosens up. You got to tighten this back up. Yeah, and then it pops out like that. It's definitely a balancing act, as you can see, to try to get this thing squared away, and then because of this thing. Come on! Just a little more, and as soon as we get it started, it goes in pretty easy. That's a little too far. We'll back it out just a hair. And let's see, and if you look, you can see that it's off by just a little bit. We're not exactly perfectly perpendicular to it, so we can just put the tool back in there. We don't even need the plate for this. You can just get it back in there and just turn it a hair. Now it's perfectly lined up. So it's perfectly lined up, so now that point or that little notch on our brake pad will line up perfectly. So this is good to go. Alright, here's the brake pads I'll be putting on. These are Duralast Gold. That's what was available to get this car back in the road. So there's the part number for this model, and it does come with brake hardware. This version does, so I like that. Hopefully they fit. Sometimes I've gotten these and they're not even close, but hopefully these are good to go. Alright, it looks like we do have the right anti-rattle clips. You can see the old ones and the new ones, they're the same. They do have a different style in here, so you got to make sure to use the right one for that whatever car you're working on. But these are good to go. And right on the bottom, I like to put just the tiniest a bit of brake grease. This is the Permatex purple stuff, and we'll pop it on the right way. Yeah, I don't put much, just a tiny bit. And I just put it, you know, it pops in like that. I should say like that. Put it right on the bottom. Alright, and also while we're right here, we'll take our brake pins out, clean them off, put some silicone on here. Just a little bit. All we need is a thin little coat. We're good to go. Make sure they move back and forth. Now, usually you got to pop the boot. You just pinch it a little bit. That way it's not sticking too far out. You don't want any pressure. It should be in a kind of a neutral position. So you saw, I don't know if you saw, but it was pushed way out. There was some pressure on it. Whoops, we don't want to get pieces of glove. Got to be careful of that. We don't want too much. Just a little bit. That's all we need. I prefer to use silicone paste for those. I always do on every brake job. You can use this stuff too. You just want to avoid stuff that's going to react with the pins in there. Some of these pins have rubber pieces on the tip and they will freeze inside there if you use the wrong product. That's why if you go with silicone, you're always going to be good. Silicone works well with rubber. Other products may not. Alright, and as you can see, here's our brake pads. One is going to have a wear indicator, one is not. And these are mirror images, so you don't want to put the wrong, brake pad on the wrong side. In this application, we want this wear indicator to be on the inside. We want it to be on the first edge. As the rotor hits, we want it to be on the first edge. So in this case, we want it to be in the down position over here. Some calipers, usually on the front, this will be over here. And so in that case, we would want it on the inside, and we would want this wear indicator to be up over here. But most rear calipers, at least on Hondas, they're going to be in the back here. And so it's going to be on the bottom. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brake grease right on the ears here, and we'll get them installed. I should mention, normally, because Honda recommends it, I will pop these shims off and put a little bit of brake grease underneath the shim here. But these are on here pretty well. I'm going to leave them alone and not do it this time. But many times that's what I like to do. So we'll just put just a little bit right there. And we'll get it installed. Sometimes, because these are brand new anti-rattle clips, kind of got to press down and mess with them a little bit. There we go. Come on. There. And you want to make sure they should float in there nicely. You see how these move around very nice. And just a little bit more brake grease right on the piston face and on the contact points right here. We could also put it right here also, but it's easier to put it this way. Less chance of getting this brake grease all over your pads. We don't want it to get on the rotor, and we don't want it to get on the inside of the pads. It's definitely going to decrease your braking for a while if you do that. And now, as long as we got that lined up and in far enough, we should be able to just take this, slide it right back over. We just got to make sure the bolts are out of the way. We'll get the top one in, and we'll get the bottom one in. Because you got that spring right here, you got to push it down a little bit to get these to line up. And there we go. Alright, we'll just tighten these two bolts up. Now we're going to have to hold on to the sliding pin right here with a 17mm wrench, and then we can just ratchet this in and we'll be good to go. Alright, we'll just hold on to it with a wrench like that. Take our ratchet. Just tighten this thing up. Man, I am sweating. It's hot out today. Sweating all over the brakes. Alright, we'll do the same thing for the bottom. It helps to have a little, what is that, a 3-inch extension. Get around all this crap. Alright, these two bolts are 18 foot-pounds. It's kind of overkill to torque these things, but I got the fancy schmancy torque wrench. We'll do it. I'll show you how it's done properly. Alright, we'll do one last inspection. Make sure we got everything. Everything looks good. We can get the wheel back on. Alright, while I'm thinking of it, we will go ahead and press the brakes a few times. We'll just pump them up, get them nice and firm. Alright, that feels good. And we'll just work the emergency brake a couple times, make sure it feels good. And it does. And we'll leave it on. We can make sure, yeah, it's working. And while I'm thinking of it, the rotors on this car were just fine, so there was no reason to change them out. Obviously, if they were bad, I would have recommended to the owner we change them out. But in this case, they were just fine. We don't need to change them out, save the owner some money. And now the brakes are pumped up, we can put our cap back on. We always want to make sure that little arrow right there is pointed to the front. And it looks like our fluid level's fine. We don't want to top it off, and not unless we were doing the front brakes, and then we could put it all the way to the top. But because we're not, we're going to leave it alone. But looking kind of dark, I think I will recommend to the owner that they replace that fluid if it's been a while. Alright, as you can see, we already got the jack in place. I left it there, and we just raise the vehicle up and we'll get these stands out of the way. I pulled the stands out of both sides, of course. I usually pull this pad out so it doesn't get destroyed by that hook. And we'll pull the wheel chocks. And we'll torque the lug nuts to the appropriate 80 foot-pounds. Alright, I'm going to take this thing for a spin so I can mate these new pads to the old rotors. And this vehicle's done. So there you go. That's how you solve strange noises coming from the rear brakes. And as always, if the video helped you out and you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.